Hello and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with Virginia. And I'm James Curry with the Communication Department here at MCHD, and I'll be facilitating today's Zoom Wellness Wednesday with Virginia. Virginia is a licensed behavioral health professional and counselor with family health. So, Virginia?
Thank you, James. Yeah, I've really looked forward to sharing a little bit about grief. There's a lot of grief going on right now in our society. Um, Everything from COVID-19 to other losses experienced. And understanding a little bit about grief can help us face it and can help us help others that are suffering from grief. So to start out, I just wanted to kind of share the specific stages of grief because you might hear me referring to how people can move from stage to stage. And this isn't necessarily linear. You can go from one stage and then go to like the fifth stage and then back to one stage. So this is not, it doesn't have to go in this order, but it has been found to go in this order for some people. So there's denial. There's also, with this denial stage, a sense of shock and numbness with that loss. There's then anger. After that, there's bargaining. Oftentimes you kind of see people just questioning why. Why did this happen? How could this happen? And kind of going through that dissonance within themselves. Then there's depression, that feeling low, that mood. And then there's acceptance. Now, this basically is the goal, to get to a place of acceptance where you're not necessarily okay with the loss that's happened, but you've somehow found resolve in the grief process, and you're willing to move forward at this point. An additional stage that has recently been introduced is meaning discovery. So, acceptance is a great place to be, but if you can create and build meaning upon your loss, then you can just do about anything. This is a great sign of resiliency if you can take your grief and then somehow find meaning in your own life, maybe what the grief and the loss has taught you. Not necessarily meaning in the death, but meaning in your own life of what you can now build upon and move forward with. So with grief, one thing I see a lot with patients is that they feel that they aren't able to talk about their grief with family because their family members are saying, well, you think you have it rough, down the road, so-and-so has lost this, and this. And that's not helpful. And the truth is that all of our grief is important. And we should not feel guilty for grieving because it might not seem as severe of a loss as someone else. Every one of us is important, and every one of us with our grief process is very important. So you'll see and hear many mental health professionals discourage against that comparative suffering. So really, if you're looking to support someone else as well, don't worry about saying something that's just perfect, because that's probably not going to happen. And a lot of things that people say end up causing more harm than good. The best way that you can be of support to somebody that's grieving is simply being present and loving them and showing up, and maybe, just spending quality time. There's definitely research found that, you know, pulling meaning, pulling humor, pulling gratitude out of life can help somebody, but let them take the lead and you just be there. That is the best way to support, because nobody, whether they're a pastor or a counselor or whoever, has the perfect thing to say. So don't try to be that person either. And so that was something that I thought was very useful. And another thing, you know, different people respond to grief differently. You might see with a couple, you know, maybe the loss of a child. There's a lot of discord and strife because one spouse thinks the other one is not grieving. But the truth is, different people grieve in different ways. You know, one person might be depressed and cry every day. The other person might throw themselves in their work and just go on autopilot. That doesn't mean that the loss did not hurt them very, very deeply and that they're still grieving. It just means they're coping with it in a different way. So kind of be aware that different people grieve in different ways. And even to that point with children and adolescents, there are some differences there. You know, with children, you might see their grades take a plummet. You know, you might see their personality change a little bit with them becoming more withdrawn, or them all they want to do is play video games to numb their pain. So, you know, especially when you see it causing dysfunction for your child, that is a great time to connect them with a counselor, because a counselor can help them in multiple ways, and a counselor can help you as a parent in discovering ways that as a family you can grieve together. Adolescents also, you know, have a unique set of traits that grief can show up differently. You know, a lot of adolescents, this is when their brains are developing. This is when they're discovering who they are as a human being, as a person. So if they're dealing with grief, I mean, you can just imagine it's like they might be questioning who they are even, because this is such a quickly rapid stage of change for an adolescent developmentally, especially when, say, an adolescent feels a responsibility to care for the family, and she or he doesn't have an opportunity to mourn. That's something to look out for, because if you don't cope and deal with your grief, it will swell up and come out later in life. And it's not pretty. So you really want to try to move through the stages of grief. And the biggest support that you can do is, one, focus on, you know, spirituality. And that really, in essence, means meaning. For one person, that might be, you know, God. For another person, that might be nature. But really allowing yourself to ask questions and spend time with, you know, your own self, and allow yourself to grieve. Another huge point is peer support. So if you can get to the point where you're connecting with someone that you love and that you trust and that you feel like supports you, that will really, really help you cope with grief in a healthy way.
I had
So, yeah.
I had some questions that I put together when you decided that you wanted to discuss this topic. But one of the questions that I had, I just thought of while you were talking, is, you know, isn't closure a part of the grief process, or at least I thought that it was. And it's got to be really tough right now during the coronavirus. Say if someone passes away, and you know there are these limitations on meetings and social distancing, And a funeral, or something like that, a ceremony would certainly count as closure. So it's got to be really difficult right now for families and people grieving that are not able to have that closure. So is there any recommendation you have for people that just can't get that closure that they want right now?
Yeah, and we as a society have built funerals and gatherings as a way to express that grief and the mourning process. So, the people that don't have that, like you said, might be questioning, how am I going to get my closure? Um, the truth is, grief lasts a long time. And a lot of people, even within the whole process of, funerals and getting together with people, that part is not nearly as difficult as 7 months later when nobody's knocking on their door anymore. Nobody's bringing over food. Nobody's, people just some people expect you to just move on. And so I would say, you know, look over the stages of grief, accept where you are. If you're still in a stage of shock, then that's okay, and some different things that could help with closure could be, writing a letter to the one that you've lost. Maybe that letter surrounding what first, whatever you want it to say, and just allow yourself to free write. It's you and the paper,
I got
and
you.
and then after that, maybe try other things like, a letter of gratitude or meaning. Like, allow yourself to process it in creative ways if you are inclined to say paint. But the point is, allow yourself to grieve and don't completely suppress it because you feel like you don't have a way out. And if you need help, a great way to get that help is to reach out to your doctor and ask for mental health support. I can't tell you how many things I've sought a counselor on the front end because I knew if I didn't, then I might not be in a good place in a month or two. So I kind of saw counseling as a preventative tool to talk about it, to get the help that I needed before it got worse.
You mentioned just a moment ago being withdrawn, or people change their personalities. Is I hear people say the word compartmentalize a lot. Is that somebody just suppressing it, or putting their grief somewhere else because they just don't know how to deal with it? Is that what
Here's
compartmentalizing
here's
means?
here's the deal. First of all, we need to not judge people. So you can have your thoughts about what someone's doing, but try your best not to judge them or their experience. Second of all, compartmentalizing is actually an adaptive strategy that we as a species have developed over time, where it helps, especially if you're saying have to go to work from 8 to 5. To a degree, you have to compartmentalize. So yes, people do that. That doesn't necessarily mean it's unhealthy, but when it's to the point where they completely are almost afraid of their grief and they can't even approach it, then that might help them indicate, okay, maybe I need to set aside, just an hour by myself where I can just allow myself to cry. Nobody's looking at me, or an hour where you can call somebody. Whatever kind of personality you have, it's for you, and it's you honoring what you've lost and allowing yourself to grieve.
Thank you for explaining that. Let me glance over here at my other computer, those questions that I had for you. Um, I think we kind of talked about it just a little bit, but um, one of my questions was grief is often associated with death. What else is grief commonly associated with?
Um, so I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier that grief is loss.
Loss, okay.
So it could mean a multitude of things. You know, in a big way, this could be the loss, say a loss of a job is something that's a really big deal. A loss of, a relationship. People can really struggle when they say go through a breakup. And it varies from person to person, but if you can categorize it as a loss, that's grief.
Okay. I think that's a really good definition. I think that would help people to be able to reach out to deal with it. If it's a loss, it's grief. That's
Yeah.
that's pretty plain and simple. Um,
Yep.
let me see. One of the things that we didn't discuss yet, um, we talked about how different behavioral health issues affect your overall physical health. So, what does grief do to the body? What is it? What does your body experience through grief? Would that be like loss of appetite and things like that, or what?
So, if you're at the stage of depression, which is about the fourth stage, but like I said, the stages can vary depending on the person. Um, right there, there's plenty of physical symptoms. You can feel a difficulty to concentrate. You can feel, just even different patterns with eating. You might be overeating more, you might be under eating, you might be fatigued and tired all the time, you might be easily irritated by people and just super sensitive to any kind of stimuli from somebody else. You could be having some really dark thoughts, thoughts of wanting to die. So all of these are great, you know, indicators and signs that you're experiencing something really, really difficult, and there is clinical depression.
Mhm.
It affects your brain, and we've just got to reduce the stigma of seeking mental health and do yourself a good service and your family a good service of reaching out and getting help.
I think I know what you're going to say and to answer me, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway. If someone goes to see their doctor or medical provider, do you think it's a good idea to mention to them that they are grieving so that that medical professional could connect them with someone for counseling? Like I said, I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and tell me what you
I mean,
recommend.
absolutely. I think it's a great technique to even write a few bullet points of what you want to talk to your doctor about, and mentioning it to your doctor, is a great idea. They also will probably have a brief screening for you, which is a depression screening, which will kind of detect some of these physical symptoms that you might be having.
So first, sounds like what you said was the first stop for someone is their physician, their provider, their regular doctor, place that they go medically, and then referred from there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's really seems to be the trend. A lot of people trust their doctors and will listen to what they have to say. And it's just, counselors now, especially here in Mobile at, Family Health with the Mobile County Health Department, our team is growing and our doctors are really referring a lot of people to our services. And so that's the linkage. Talk to your doctor and they'll refer you to a licensed counselor.
Now, I personally know the answer to this because I listen to you and hear what you have to say on this topic, um, because I know that grief can be overcome, that you can survive grief, you can succeed. What message, what brief message would you give to someone to give them the hope that they need to get through this grief process, to get to that last stage? What would you say to them as a counselor?
Well, if they're getting to the last stage of acceptance and discovery of meaning, they've already done a lot of work. Um, and but it is important to know and to aim for that stage. I would say, you know, that people thrive from discovery of meaning. If you can discover meaning of your loss, and also I would say that just because someone has passed away doesn't mean you have to stop having a connection. You know, they are in a new form, but that doesn't mean you have to pretend like they don't exist. So there is actually another place that you can look to lean in that relationship and connect, and their body not actually be physically in front of you, and that is okay. A lot of people do that, and that is totally okay. So, you know, it's then what you do with it. So instead of asking why and pulling your hair out, ask yourself, now what? Now what am I going to do? How am I going to live my life, you know, and move forward and not forget, but move forward, and, you know, just ask yourself, now what? And try to pull meaning for your own life. Maybe this person taught you something about life. You know, maybe when you're in certain places, you feel closer to that person, and that's great, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think everything that you've touched upon is obviously helpful, and I know that you're making a difference here every day that you counsel people, and we certainly appreciate Wellness Wednesday. We know that you're working on some other topics that you'll discuss later for Wellness Wednesday for this month. I know you do have some grief resources that you will associate with this video. Um, do you want to maybe quickly mention how someone could get in touch with you if they want counseling?
Sure. So, you know, you can call the main appointment line in getting a referral. You can also, or even in first setting up an appointment with a doctor, but you can also reach me directly at Behavioral Health Administration at 251 410 5772. Again, that's 251 410 5772. We want to help you. You know, if you're a leader, if you're a nurse, if you're somebody that cares about other people in your setting that you can tell are really hurting, call me. There's plenty of presentations I've created. I'm happy to help.
And the appointment line is 251 690 8889. And that's if anyone wants to start the process there. Well, Virginia, thank you for touching on this topic. I know that it's kind of an emotional topic, and it means different things to different people. And there are a lot of people that are grieving right now during the coronavirus and everything else that's going on. And hopefully people will have heard your message and checked out the resources that you've provided. But thank you again for this, another good Wellness Wednesday.
Thank you, James, and thank you everybody who tuned in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.